Today, I'm going to teach you how to make sourdough bread. And this recipe is so easy, breezy. I mean, the worst part about the whole recipe is you're going to be wanting to make sourdough bread every week, maybe even twice a week. When you make sourdough bread, it is really from flour and water that has been allowed to develop wild natural yeast, hence the name sourdough. First thing I'm going to do, and I'll have the recipe for the actual starter, which I already have made up here. I'll have the recipe at the end of the video, but what I want to do right now is show you how easy it is to get started with your sourdough starter. There's a process. It's going to take about 5 days. You'll have enough time to get all your ingredients together, search out the coveted yeast. I've got a couple of different kinds here I'll tell you about, but you'll have a chance to find your yeast, get your bread flour, and all-purpose flour. Now, the instructions call for starting with whole wheat because it has more of a tendency to have the natural flora in it that's going to create the yeast. But you can also use this is bread flour, but you can also use just all-purpose flour. I have these flours not because of any other reason other than this was what I was able to find at the store. But literally, you can make sourdough bread from all-purpose flour. I prefer bread flour because that's my favorite, but you can use any kind. Let's get started on making the starter. Here's how easy it is to get ready to make your sourdough. 1 cup of whole wheat flour. I'm using organic. You can use whatever kind you want, or you can use all-purpose, and 1/2 cup of water. This is what we want to do. You want to stir it up, and you get that? And it's going to look a little bit like this. It's going to look like peanut butter. So, we got that part done. There we go, and here's what we're going to do. Now you've got your sourdough started, and you want to incorporate all the water, mix it, make sure there's no dry flour left in there. And this is how we're going to get ready to make our sourdough. So we got that done. Now we're going to take this and we're going to wrap it. This is the beginning of the 5-day process. What you're going to need to do to make this become this, I'll have it at the end of the recipe on how to prepare the starter. But for now, we'll just put this to the side and we'll begin the process. After 5 days of stirring and wrapping and stirring, we come up with this beautiful, fragrant, oh my God, I wish you could smell this sourdough starter. It is, the aroma, the fragrance is amazing. It's a tanginess, it's a wholeness, it's a earthiness that, I mean, well, if you like sourdough bread, you guys already know there's nothing that compares to it. Now, well, the starter is pretty easy, but the bread is even easier. We're going to start with 1 cup of this starter. I'm just scooping this out. And I've been working with this for about a month. I've added to it, they call it feeding, when you add more flour, more water to keep the yeast going. You know, the scripture that says a little leaven leavens a whole lump. This is our little leaven right here. So we'll get that in there. And this is basically just our flour and water. You can add a 1/2 teaspoon of yeast along the process of making your starter, just to give it a little boost if you want. You won't hurt it, and it won't affect the flavor, but we'll get this in here. So now we've got 1 cup of yeast. Now, what we want to do, we got 1 cup of starter. Now, the next thing we're going to add is 1.5 cups of lukewarm water. I have that here. And to the lukewarm water, we're going to add some yeast. And I think we need about 1.5 teaspoons. Get that out of there. Okay. 1. can only read the writing on this. And a half. Okay, here we go. So that's that. Now this is getting easier with every step. Yeast, water, and again, I'll have a recipe at the end of the video, but right now we've got 1 cup of our starter, 1.5 cups of lukewarm water, and 1.5 teaspoons of yeast. So this goes into our starter. And we want to get this mixed up. And when you're done with your starter, you can put it back in the nice little cubby place you've had it. I usually put mine in the corner of a cabinet because I'm baking bread every week these days. But if you're not going to use it right away, you can put it in a 1-quart mason jar and put it in the back of your refrigerator. Right before you get ready to bake, be sure to take it out and let it sit out at room temperature. But for now, we're just going to set that over there. Okay, look what we got going here. This, and you want to incorporate all the yeast. Now, the other thing you want to add, this is literally 3 ingredients. 3 ingredients, that's all we're working with. 3 ingredients. And our other one is 2.5 teaspoons of salt. So that's going in here. I can get my little salt shaker open. You never want to measure your salt over your bowl, just in case you have a little slip of the hand. You don't want to get more salt in there than you need. So that's 1. Seems like a lot of salt, but it's necessary to give the bread the lift and the tanginess. So we're going to go ahead and use what the recipe calls for. So that's 2.5. Okay, now already I can smell how wonderful this smells. Oh my goodness. The aroma, the richness, the rusticness. Okay, I'm just gonna give it a little stir to make sure we've got that salt. Now, here's the fun part. The recipe calls for 5 cups of flour. You can use all-purpose flour. I happen to like bread flour. I use King Arthur's, I use Pillsbury, Gold Medal. You can use any kind of flour, even all-purpose. It's totally up to you because this is a very rustic recipe, and so the bread performs well. You get different types of texture and different types of crunchiness when you vary the quality of flour. So experiment with it. But let's do this. 5 cups. Now, what I found is that I don't particularly like to measure when it comes to making my rolls, my bread, rather whole wheat. We've got bread machines, we've got our mixers. If I'm not able to touch the dough, I want to feel the dough. I want to get the tenderness. I don't want to put it in a mixer and just have it clumping around after I dump in 5 cups of flour. So I don't measure my flour. I just put it in until the ancestors tell me to stop. And you'll begin to see it bubbling, you know. And this is so easy. Who cannot make bread like this? With literally 3 ingredients. I'm making a little mess here, but literally, and I'll leave that flour down there because we're going to be kneading on this counter in a little bit. I got my counter nice and clean. I love to work right on top of my counter when I'm making bread, but as I'm mixing this, you can actually see how this is coming together. There's a aroma that's coming off of it, and you just want to keep mixing it by hand until you get it pretty smooth. That's the first step. A little at a time until you get all of this incorporated and you get it pretty smooth. Then you want to add some more. And this is coming in a little bit slower because now you want to begin to form your ball. And once it begins to form, as you can see how that's coming together, and I'm using my spatula because it works best. It kind of mimics a dough paddle. If you're using your bread machine, this is the kind of action, or your mixer, this is the kind of action you're looking for. You want to add it in slowly so that it begins to kind of pull away from the sides. See how it's doing there? And I'm using the spatula to kind of help scrape it. but I'm getting a semi-ball. Now, once it starts to pull away, I'm going to add a little bit more flour on top of it. I'm going to add a little flour on my counter, because this is where we get our hands in the mix. I'm stirring this and scraping the sides, and then I'm just going to turn it right out. Now I want to get as much of this flour and dough out of here as I possibly can get, because I'm going to put it right back in this bowl for it to rise. So now I'm getting my hands in it. You can begin to see it coming together. Taking this off the spatula. Got clean hands. Okay, I'm going to put that there for now. Now we start to just bringing it together. Okay, you may say, oh, I don't want all that on my fingers. Use your mixer or keep stirring it with your spatula. But to me, this is the fun part. And as you can see, there's a tenderness that I'm feeling with this bread. It's coming together. It's just something special is happening right now, because I feel the stickiness leaving. And you just want to, if you don't know how to knead, you just get in it and just keep rolling it over, folding it over, just like this. See there? Put a little flour on your hands and just keep turning it over. I pull up one, I push it out a little bit, then I pull out the corner. See that? Make sure I got enough down here, because each time I make this fold, I'm adding more flour in. See that? Now, you can add, you want to add enough flour so it's not sticky, it's not too soft, and you can feel the texture of the bread coming together. See how this is doing here? I'm feeling this bread. It's not, the mushiness is leaving, it's beginning to get some body to it. Now I'm picking up my speed a little bit, because I see what's getting ready to happen here. And it doesn't take too much work. Get them arms working. I keep working these arms because I don't want them granny flaps. And I haven't had enough time in the gym over the last couple of months. So this is getting the buys and the tries and keeping them tight. And look how beautiful this is. Now we're beginning to look at this. Look at this. See, when that dough is looking at you like that, you know you're getting close. I like to add a little more flour. Even once it gets to this stage, you can kind of pull it apart and show you while it's still a little sticky. You just want to add maybe a couple of more turns of flour. You can make it as dense as you like. The more flour you add, the denser your loaves will be. I like my loaves a little tender. And there's so many ways that you can shape these once you're done. This can actually be one loaf that you can bake in a Dutch oven. After you proof it, which we're going to put it back in the bowl, I'm going to talk to you a little bit about proofing. But once you proof it, you can put it in a Dutch oven, cover it with a lid. You're going to get that rich, dark brown sourdough bread with a real thick crust. I made some like that the first time. I really liked it. But what I found I like the best is making sandwich loaves and making baguettes, because that way I have two loaves. I can have one for snacking and the other one we can cut for sandwiches. So here we go. I don't even know if we've been in 30 minutes, but we're just about ready. As you can see, the stickiness is gone. It's taken on a nice texture. Feels like it has some body and substance to it. I know it's going to be able to sustain the yeast and the rise. You don't want it too mushy. You don't want it too sticky. You want to be able to do this and not have any stickiness on your hands. Okay, now, there we go, and that's ready. Now the last thing I want to do, I want to put a little oil in this bowl, just a little bit. You're not even going to have to change the bowl or anything. We're just putting a little oil because the bread's going right back in here. See, we're going to put a little I use olive oil because I'm on this olive oil kick right now, but you can use any type of oil that you like. Let me get a cotton napkin. This is the first rise. We call this proofing. We let it rise. We're gonna put it. I've got my own little proofer oven that I made up earlier. I put a pot of hot water in the oven. The oven is off, but I wanted the hot water to create a warm, humid atmosphere to help rush this along a little bit. It's a great trick, and it'll help whenever you're making rolls or bread or anything like that. You can make your own proofing oven. So I've got hot water ready to go. My bread's in the oven. It's going to go for the first rise. It's probably going to take maybe about 35 to 45 minutes to double in size. So I'm going to get cleaned up here, and we're going to be right back, maybe about 45 minutes, and we'll take a look and see where we are, and we'll shape our rolls and put them in the oven for the second rise. I'll see you in a little bit. Okay. It looks like our sourdough has doubled in size, so we're going to get ready to form the loaves. While I was waiting for this to get completely risen, as you can see, it's absolutely beautiful. And while I was waiting for this to come up to full size, the pot of water that I have in the oven, I reheated it again and just put it back in so that when I form my loaves, it'll be good and hot and humid, and it'll be ready to proof the loaves. So let's get started. Let me show you how easy this is. We're going to put a little bit more flour down here because we're going to shape our loaves. I want to get two. Look at that. There, now, look at that. And you see that? That's some beauty right there. Look at that. Beautiful, elastic, smells wonderful. We're just going to pour it right out. Now, set that in the, if you wanted to make one full loaf, one big loaf, you could do it. Look how beautiful this is. This could be one loaf, but we're going to make two loaves out of it because I want one kind of elongated as a baguette, and then I want to have another one a little bit fatter that we can use for sandwiches. So we're going to just cut right through this, and you can just take a look at how beautiful this dough is. Look at that. And it's going to be, I mean, it's going to be amazing. And keep in mind, we've only added 3 ingredients plus water, if you want to count water as an ingredient. We used flour, we used yeast, and then we used our sourdough starter as well as a little bit of water. Flour, water, sourdough starter, and yeast. Oh, I forgot, we also use salt. But it's on, I'm gonna have the recipe posted, and you'll be able to grab it. And this is how I'm shaping the rolls. Hope he's getting a good picture of this. I just kind of folded it over. I want it to get elongated, so I'm doing this movement right here. You can flip it over and hit it, double it over again, but it's going to double in size. So the tighter you make this, and it can be rustic, doesn't have to be perfect. That's the beauty of homemade bread, artisan bread as we call it. You can just make it however you want. It's going to be delicious. The aroma, your family's going to go crazy. Make sure you have some butter. I've got mine sitting out on the counter over there getting soft. So when this comes out of the oven, we'll be able to enjoy some. Now, you can use parchment paper, but good old-fashioned parchment paper is really kind of expensive. So if you want to take a sandwich bag, as I've used here, I keep sandwich bags on hand. So I just cut the bottom out of a sandwich bag and put it in my pan. It's going to work perfect instead of paying extra money for parchment paper. Then I also spray it with a little bit of Pam. You can use a generic brand as well. I like Pam baking just because I do bake on a professional level and I don't want my baked goods sticking. I know I can always trust Pam, but you can use any kind of baking spray. And so that's loaf number 1. Now we're going to work on loaf number 2, and this is going to be, I'm going to shape this in more of an oval. I'm going to make a tight oval out of it, and it's going to rise, and we're going to use it for sandwiches. Not hard to do. I may be working a little fast for some of you, but this will just show you how easy it is to get our loaves formed. You want to fold it over, make a little crease in it, pinch the bottom. I like to keep a little flour on it, and then you shape it. Get it the shape that you want. Again, it doesn't have to be perfect. This is artisan bread, and there we have it. So now our loaves are shaped, and they're ready to go into the oven to rise. We're gonna let them rise for maybe about 20 minutes, if that long, because I have hot water in the oven. That's creating the humid, warm atmosphere that we need to get these guys poofed up pretty quickly. So maybe 15, 20 minutes, but on the last 5 minutes, let's say in about 10 minutes, we're gonna come back and I'm gonna make some slits in this to allow it to further expand, and then I'll show you how we put a little spray on it and put our flour on it to really give it that perfect artisan look. So I'm gonna put these in the oven to rise, and we'll be back in about 10, 15 minutes. Hopefully these guys will be ready, and I'll show you how to put the flour and make some nice little carvings on it. I'll be right back. Okay, we've got our loaves ready. I've taken them out of the oven and set them on top and turned my oven on to 475 degrees. Now we're going to do the finishing touches. I've got a sharp bread knife here. I'm going to put a little bit of flour on it so it doesn't stick. And we're going to put just some rustic carvings on this bread. You can do it however you want to do it. I'm just coming across these loaves with just a diagonal slash. Doesn't matter. I could have put a round slash on it. In fact, I think I will, just to show you it doesn't matter. You can actually give it any kind of cut you want to give it. Make sure you got enough flour on your bread knife so that when you come down through there, and we're making these slashes so that when it hits that hot oven, it will just poof up and expand, and it'll really make this bread just pop. So we've got our slashes, and it's ready to go. Now, here's another little trick you can do. I've got a water bottle here. I just like to put a little sprinkle of water on it. This is going to help to keep it soft while it's baking. And then here's another little trick. You may notice bread that has that dusting of flour. That's just something else to give it a little signature and give it a little more artisan look. We're going to put this in the oven. It's on 475 degrees. We're going to cook it for about 15, 20 minutes, get it a nice golden brown, then we'll be ready to have some delicious sourdough bread. Okay, it looks like the time has come. Our sourdough bread has been baking for about 20 minutes. I started it out on 475, but I kicked it up shortly after I put it in to 485 degrees. Sourdough can take a lot of heat. I wanted a good dark brown crust on it, so we're just now pulling it out of the oven. It's been in here for about 20 minutes, and as you can see, OMG, this bread is just the bomb. Just coming out of the oven. We're going to be real careful with it, but I want to show you if I can. I should let it sit a minute, but for the sake of the video, we're just going to go ahead on and deal with this thing. And as you can see, look at this. It has risen so beautifully. I want to do this. Look at that. Let me get my mittens off. Get my towel here. Look at this bread. Is that near perfection or what? And we got a nice, beautiful hard crust on that. Now, I always say I have asbestos fingers, so you might want to let it cool a little bit before you handle it. But for me, I've been doing this a long time, and I think the tips of my fingers are somewhat numb. But I wanted to get that bread out so I can show it to you and just give you a picture of it. The bread is beautiful. My cutting board is beautiful. It was a gift from my grandson, and he handmade it, and I just absolutely adore it. So much about this bread the simplicity of it, the easiness of it, the rusticness of it, just the nature of it. This is something you can do with your grandkids. What do we need? Flour, salt, water, yeast, and the sourdough starter. We started out with whole wheat flour in water, let it sit for 5 days. We added half a cup of water and another half a cup of flour. Half a cup of water, another half a cup of flour. We did that for 5 days, stirring every 12 hours, letting it sit in a warm place, and it created beautiful yeast, and that's what we use for the starter. So this bread's ready to go. I'm gonna show you a little slice of it. You gotta sample it. I mean, that's the whole point in baking bread, is that you can have a little taste of it when it first comes out of the oven. But I wanna show you the beauty of this simple bread. Let me get all the way through the crust. Will you look at that? Get a good close-up of that so they can see how beautiful the bread is. It's still steaming. How wonderful is this? You can do this. You can make 5 loaves on a Saturday morning, Sunday morning, Sunday afternoon, wrap them up, put them in your freezer. This is perfect for making sandwiches. You can cut it thinner or thicker. I like this for putting a little butter on it, a little jam, having it with some cheese in the middle of the day. So much you can do with this bread. I'm going to post the recipe, but right now I'm going to have a little sample of this bread. And you know, it's sourdough bread, so there's no need of plan. We just break it with our fingers. That's the best way to do it. I also love this bread with some olive oil. But I gotta take a little sample of it just to see what's going on here. Take a little bite. The crunchiness, the tanginess, the depth of the yeast is just amazing. You can do this easy as pie. Excuse me. Gotta get it out of my throat before I talk. You can do this easy as pie. I'm going to post the recipe. I hope you've enjoyed Classic Home Cooking with Dora Sanders Hill, our sourdough bread. Hope you enjoy making it as well. Bye now.